Tonight, we travel to a quiet countryside, a place where time seems to move just a little bit slower, where the trees whisper secrets in the dark, and where one boy is sent to stay with his grandparents for the summer. But as the days stretch on, he begins to notice strange things, unblinking stares, the sound of strings tightening at night, and a feeling in his chest that something is terribly, terribly wrong. This is not the visit he remembers, and these may not be the grandparents he thought he knew. So settle in, close your eyes, let the shadows settle around you, and listen carefully to the story called Help, My Grandparents Are Puppets. Chapter 1. The Drive to Nowhere. I'd never been to my grandparents' house before. I didn't even know they had a house. Growing up, I barely saw them. Maybe a Christmas card once in a while, maybe a voice on the other end of the phone when Dad remembered to call. But after the accident, after Dad was gone and Mom was checked into that place with the floral wallpaper and padded corners, the social worker found their names tucked into a dusty manila file and decided that blood was better than the system. So here I was, riding in the back of a silver sedan with a caseworker named Michelle, who chewed gum too loudly and talked to herself when she thought I couldn't hear. They live out in the country. Peaceful folks, she'd said, as the cityscape behind us turned into rolling fields and long stretches of pine. Good people, from what I can tell. Retired puppeteers. Isn't that cute? Puppeteers, I'd repeated. Yeah, old-school entertainers. Used to travel around doing little shows for kids. You'll like them. She smiled at me through the rearview mirror, but her eyes didn't match the smile. We drove for hours, the roads getting thinner, the trees taller, the silence more oppressive. No cell signal, no houses, just Michelle, me, and my suitcase packed with more questions than clothes. It was nearly sunset when we pulled up to the house. It looked like a page torn out of an old picture book. White shutters, crooked chimney, porch swing gently swaying in the breeze. But something about it felt off. The curtains didn't move, even when the wind pushed hard against the house. The lawn was too perfectly mowed. There were no birds. Michelle knocked twice. No answer. She knocked again, louder. Then the door opened. And there they were, my grandparents. They looked normal. Old, sure, but normal. Grandma wore a pale blue dress with tiny white flowers. Her grey hair was tied back in a bun so tight it looked sculpted. Grandpa had on corduroy slacks and a cardigan that hung too perfectly on his shoulders. Both were smiling, eyes wide. "Liam," Grandma said, her voice warm and soft like worn felt. "We're so happy you're here." Come in," Grandpa added, stepping aside with a mechanical sweep of his arm. Michelle gave me a look, somewhere between relieved and anxious, before nudging me inside. The house smelled like lemon polish and something faintly musty, like old wood. "Let's get your things upstairs," Grandma said, already turning to the narrow staircase that curled up like a snail shell. Grandpa's shoes clicked unnaturally on the floor as he followed her. I hesitated, then stepped in. There was no turning back now. Chapter 2. The Rules of the House. The room they gave me was small but clean. Bed made with hospital corner precision. A tall dresser with brass handles. A window that looked out over the backyard where the grass was too green, too even, too still. I stood at the window that night for a long time. No stars, no crickets, no wind, just silence. Breakfast the next morning was already on the table when I came down. Eggs, toast, sausage, all perfectly arranged like a picture from a menu. Grandma sat across from me, hands folded neatly on the table. "Did you sleep well, dear?" she asked. I nodded, though I hadn't. I'd heard footsteps in the hall all night, soft, measured, repeating in loops. "That's good. You'll find things very peaceful here," she said. Grandpa sat beside her, buttering toast with slow, precise strokes. We like to keep a routine. "Routine is good," Grandma added. "It keeps everything in order." I ate in silence. The food was warm, but it tasted like nothing. Like chewing on memory. After breakfast, they gave me a tour of the house. Living room with bookshelves lined with leather-bound volumes. A sewing room that smelled like mothballs. A den with a fireplace that hadn't been lit in years. But it was the basement door that caught my attention. It was bolted shut. Not locked, bolted, with two heavy iron latches and a thick padlock hanging from a chain. "What's down there?" I asked. Grandpa's smile didn't waver. Old storage. Just dusty boxes and broken things, Grandma added. Nothing for you. They moved on, and I followed, but I kept thinking about that door. That night, I found a note on my pillow. It was handwritten in perfect cursive, the paper stiff and yellowed. House rules. 1. No leaving your room after 10 p.m. 2. Do not open the curtains in the downstairs sitting room. 3. Never touch the marionette in the glass cabinet. 4. Do not ask about the basement. 5. Always answer when we call your name. I stared at the list for a long time. When I looked up, the glass cabinet across the hallway was lit from within. I hadn't noticed it before. Inside sat a marionette, life-sized, dressed like a boy from the 1800s. Its eyes were too real, and its head tilted just slightly as I passed. Chapter 3. I tried to ignore the marionette. That night I closed my door tight and buried the house rules note beneath my pillow, hoping the weight of my head might press its words out of memory. But even with the door shut, I could feel its glassy eyes on me, watching, waiting. I dreamed of strings, long black strings descending from the ceiling like spider silk, tangling around my wrists, ankles, neck. Something pulling me upward, inch by inch, while my grandparents' voices whispered from below, "Just a little higher now, Liam. Just a little more control." I woke up choking on my sheets. The morning light was grey and heavy, as if the sun had second thoughts about shining on this place. I made my way downstairs, drawn almost magnetically to the cabinet in the hallway. The marionette was still there, still dressed in his knickers and suspenders, pale hands resting politely in his lap. His strings hung loose, coiled behind the glass. But something was different. His head had turned. Only slightly, maybe 15 degrees to the left, but enough that he was now facing me. I looked behind the cabinet. No switches, no controls, just wood and wallpaper and dust. When I turned back, I could have sworn his mouth had opened, just a hair. "Sleep well?" Grandma's voice floated from the kitchen. I jumped. She stood at the end of the hall with a plate of cookies in her hand, smiling so broadly I thought her face might split. "I made oatmeal raisin, your favourite. I never told you that was my favourite." Her smile didn't falter. "Didn't you?" We ate cookies in the sitting room, the one with the closed curtains. The room was cold, though no windows were open. "I think I saw the marionette move," I said quietly, watching her face. She took a delicate bite, chewed slowly. "That doll's been in the family for generations, part of a very old show. Very old." "Does it ever move on its own?" Her eyes drifted toward the hallway. "Only when it's needed." That night, I couldn't sleep again. I stared at my ceiling, listening to faint creaks and murmurs, the sound of string being drawn through pulleys, of wood tapping gently on wood. At exactly 3:03 a.m., I heard a soft knock at my door. Not loud, not urgent, just a polite, almost apologetic tap. I didn't answer. The knock came again, then a whisper, "Liam, come downstairs." The voice was thin, childlike. I pressed my ear against the door. Silence. When I opened the door a crack, the hallway was empty. But a single string lay across the floor, black, thin, taut. I followed it with my eyes. It disappeared under the crack of the basement door. Chapter 4, Strings and Lies. I didn't mention the basement string at breakfast. Grandpa was humming tunelessly as he folded a napkin into a perfect triangle. Grandma stirred her tea with a spoon that never clinked. Everything was too quiet again. I needed to talk to someone. After breakfast, I snuck away to the little office room off the den, where an old rotary phone sat beneath a doily, the kind of phone that looked like it should only be used to contact the dead. I picked it up. There was no dial tone, just static. And beneath the static, a faint sound, like someone breathing too close to the receiver. I put it down and backed away. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe this was stress, grief, trauma. Maybe the puppet in the hallway was just a creepy decoration. But then I found the photograph. It was tucked inside a red leather album in the sewing room, a black and white photo dated 1949. It showed a young couple, presumably my grandparents, standing in front of a puppet stage. Hanging beside them was a marionette that looked exactly like the one in the cabinet, but the caption beneath it read, "With our dear boy Elliot, always part of the show." Elliot, the puppet had a name, and it was part of the family. I flipped the page. More photos of shows, of kids laughing, of strings dancing in the air, but no sign of a real child. No photo of a baby, a toddler, a son, just the puppet, always smiling, always there. That night, I left my room after 10. Rule number 1, broken. The hallway was dark, but the cabinet glowed faintly again. Elliot's eyes followed me as I passed. I crept to the basement door, clutching the small flashlight I'd found in the dresser. The padlock was gone. The door hung slightly open, the smell of dust and old glue wafting up from the shadows. I pushed it open and stepped inside. The basement stairs creaked under my feet, but I moved slowly, silently. The air grew colder with each step. At the bottom, I found rows of puppets, hundreds of them, hanging from the ceiling like sleeping bats. Their strings tangled, their limbs still. Wooden faces stared blankly ahead, but some of them looked familiar. One had my father's nose. Another had my mother's eyes. I turned and ran back up the stairs, only to find Grandma standing at the top. She was holding a pair of scissors. "You weren't supposed to see this yet, dear," she said gently. I stared at the scissors. "What is this place?" She sighed. "It's where the show begins." Behind her, Grandpa appeared. He held something behind his back. I backed away. The puppets in the basement began to sway gently, as if stirred by a wind only they could feel. Then I saw it. A new marionette, half-finished, propped up on a stool. It wore jeans, a hoodie. Its face looked like mine. Chapter 5. The show must go on. I didn't sleep. I lay awake in bed with my flashlight gripped in both hands, pointing at the door like it could stop whatever was waiting on the other side. No one knocked that night, but I heard whispering. Not words, just the sound of movement, of creaking wood and twitching joints. The low hum of something being rehearsed. And beneath it all, a faint melody. The tune Grandpa always hummed during breakfast. When the sun finally broke over the horizon, I dressed quickly and crept down the stairs, careful to avoid the 4th step. It groaned like a dying animal when stepped on. The hallway was still. The marionette in the cabinet hadn't moved, but its eyes were closed now. I was certain they had been open the night before. In the kitchen, Grandma was stirring something in a pot that smelled sweet and wrong. Grandpa stood behind her, holding an old accordion, pressing the keys with slow, deliberate fingers. "Good morning, sunshine," Grandma said without turning around. "We didn't hear you come in last night." "I got thirsty," I lied. "Went downstairs to get a glass of water." Grandpa's hands paused on the accordion. "There's no water in the basement, dear," Grandma said. "That's where the tools are." I sat down at the table, trying to look calm, normal. "I found the puppet workshop," I said. "All those faces, people." Grandma turned then. Her smile was gentle, but her eyes were hollow. "Puppets are people, Liam. That's what makes them special. They look like my parents." Silence. Grandpa played a few more notes, something somber now. "Your father didn't want to be part of the legacy," Grandma said softly. "But he had the gift, just like you." "I don't have any gift," I snapped. "I don't want to be part of this." Grandpa stepped forward and placed something on the table in front of me. It was a wooden hand, half-carved, fingers delicate, too small to be adult-sized. It looked exactly like mine. I pushed away from the table and ran. Outside, the world looked painted on, sky too blue, grass too green. Nothing moved, no birds, no wind, no bugs, just that still, waxy perfection. The front gate wouldn't budge. I shook it, kicked it, climbed it, nothing. It felt welded shut. I followed the fence line, hoping to find a break. But after walking for what felt like hours, I found myself back at the house again, as if the whole property folded in on itself. The front door creaked open. Grandma stood there holding a mug of cocoa. "Come in, Liam, you'll catch cold." I wanted to scream, to run, to claw at the sky, but I stepped inside, because I didn't know what else to do. Chapter 6. Dress Rehearsal. That evening they asked me to join them in the living room. "We want to show you something," Grandma said. The marionette cabinet was open now, Elliot gone. A small puppet stage had been assembled in the living room, velvet curtains, footlights, tiny wooden chairs facing forward. Grandpa stood behind the stage, adjusting strings and pulleys. Grandma dimmed the lights. "Just watch," she said. "This is how the magic works." The curtains parted, and there he was, Elliot. He danced across the stage with a jerk of strings, arms and legs moving with unnatural precision. He bowed, waved, turned a somersault. But then he stopped and looked directly at me. Grandpa's hands froze above the stage. "Something's wrong," he muttered. Elliot began to speak, not in a puppet voice, not in a squeaky falsetto, but in something deeper, something real. "I don't want to be part of the show anymore." Grandma's face tightened. "Hush now, Elliot." But the marionette twisted free. His strings went limp, and yet he kept moving. "I didn't ask for this." He leapt from the stage and landed with a soft wooden clack on the floor. Then he ran toward me. I froze. His small wooden hand reached out and grabbed mine. It was warm. "Run," he whispered. Before I could move, Grandpa dropped the curtain and lunged, but Elliot tugged hard on my hand, and we bolted down the hallway, past the kitchen, past the sewing room, toward the back of the house. There was another door, small and hidden behind a bookcase. Elliot reached behind a stack of old encyclopedias and pressed something. Click. The door swung open, revealing a narrow stairwell that spiraled down. "The real workshop," he said, "where they make us." We descended. The air was thick with varnish and dust. At the bottom, the room opened into a chamber that looked like a surgical theatre crossed with a woodshop. Tables lined with bodies. Not dead ones, unfinished ones. Puppets with human features, skin half-stitched, eyes painted on, strings embedded in the base of their necks. I saw one with my own face. Not just similar. Exact. Elliot turned to me. "They're trying to replace you." "Why?" I asked. My voice cracked. "Because you're the last. The show needs fresh blood. You're still real." Behind us, the door slammed shut. Grandma and Grandpa stood at the top of the stairs, silhouettes in the flickering light. Grandpa raised a long metal rod like a marionette controller the size of a sword. "You shouldn't have come down here," he said. Elliot stepped in front of me. "Run when I say." "But the door." "I'll open it. Just trust me." Grandma descended the stairs slowly, like a spider descending a web. Her hands were empty, but her eyes gleamed with something sharp. "Elliot, come back," she crooned. "You were our favourite." "I'm not yours anymore," he said. Then he turned to me. "Now." He threw himself at Grandpa's legs. I sprinted. Up the stairs, past the stunned figures, through the kitchen, the hallway, the front door, which was now open. I didn't stop. I ran into the woods, barefoot and breathless. I didn't look back. Behind me I heard strings snapping and someone scream. Chapter 7. I didn't know how long I ran. The trees blurred past me in crooked silhouettes like they were bending to watch. The sky above was blood orange with dusk when I finally collapsed near a creek, my lungs burning. The air smelled clean out here, real, but I didn't feel safe. Not even close. I checked my arms for strings, my neck, my ankles. Still me, still flesh, still breathing. Somewhere behind me, far off, I heard that accordion melody again. The same tune Grandpa played in the kitchen, only slower now. Dragged out, mourning. I didn't sleep. I sat there until the moon rose, trying to piece together what I had seen. The puppets that looked like family. Elliot, alive, dead, trapped in wood. My own puppet double, perfectly carved. It didn't make sense, but I couldn't deny it anymore. My grandparents weren't people. Not in the way they pretended to be. And they weren't just making puppets. They were becoming them. Or worse, turning others into them. I had to tell someone. In the morning, I followed the creek downstream until I hit a gravel road. I flagged down a passing pickup, half wild with exhaustion. The driver was a woman in her 60s, wearing a flannel jacket and a cigarette tucked behind one ear. She looked me over like I was a stray dog. "You hurt?" she asked. "I need help," I said. "My grandparents, they're not normal." "Where do you come from?" I pointed behind me. The big white house with the ivy, past the old orchard. Her expression changed. "That house has been abandoned 30 years, she said. "No, it's not. I was just there." She didn't argue, just let me climb in and drove me to the sheriff's station in town. I told them everything. The puppets, the secret workshop, the faces that looked like mine. They smiled politely, took notes, said they'd look into it. But I saw the looks they exchanged when they thought I wasn't watching. I could tell they thought I was making it up. Until I mentioned Elliot. The deputy's hand froze above his notepad. "Elliot?" "Yeah." "The puppet boy. They called him their son." The sheriff leaned forward. What did he look like? Small, pale, red suspenders, like from another time. He said he used to be real. The deputy stood and left the room. A few minutes later, he came back with a faded newspaper clipping. Local child missing, 1949. Elliot Mason, aged 9, vanished from his grandparents' home. Authorities found signs of struggle, but no remains. The Masons disappeared shortly after. I stared at the grainy photo. It was him, the marionette, but alive, still full of life. The sheriff looked shaken. That property's condemned now, been for decades. You say you were inside it? I nodded. I escaped last night. The sheriff looked at the deputy. We need a unit out there. I begged them to let me come. They said no, too dangerous. So I waited at the station, pacing, sweating, staring at that photo of Elliot until the ink blurred. 2 hours passed. When they returned, the sheriff was pale and tight-lipped. There's nothing there, son. I stood up. What? The house is gone. Just a burnt foundation. No furniture, no cabinets, no puppets, not even a basement. I didn't understand. They showed me pictures, fresh ones, taken that morning. Charred rubble, ivy choking the skeleton of a chimney, like it had burned down years ago. But I was just there. The sheriff put a hand on my shoulder. We believe you saw something. Trauma can do strange things to the mind. No one believed me. But I knew what I saw, and I wasn't done. Not yet. Chapter 8. Hollow Hearts. The state assigned me to a temporary foster home while they investigated further. It was a quiet place outside of town. Nice people. A woman named Marion and her husband Carl. They were kind, but I could feel them watching me when they thought I wasn't looking, like I might snap. I didn't talk much, not until I saw the bookshelf. In their living room, among the novels and knickknacks, sat an old marionette. Not Elliot. This one was a girl. Blonde, pigtails, a blue dress with sewn-on daisies. But her eyes, they looked too aware. You like that doll? Marion asked one night. I turned slowly. Where did it come from? Oh, I've had her forever. She was a gift from my grandmother. I stared at the puppet. How old were you when you got it? Marion blinked. Funny, I don't remember. Always just had it, I suppose. Carl nodded. It's always been there. My skin prickled. That night I crept into the living room and examined the marionette more closely. There, under her sleeve, was a tiny inscription burned into the wood. Emma. Age 6. Another one. Another child. I started researching, quietly, secretly, and the deeper I dug, the more I found. Scattered across the country, reports of families disappearing, abandoned properties, children who went missing, always around grandparents, and always some mention of a puppet. Sometimes described as eerily lifelike, sometimes as part of the furniture. Never investigated seriously, over decades, centuries maybe, a pattern no one had seen. Or maybe no one wanted to see. I started drawing them, sketching each puppet I could find photos of, records of. Emma, Elliot, a boy with glasses, a girl with braces, a baby, a teenager, all frozen in time, all posed behind glass. And then one night, as I worked by candlelight, I saw something out the window. A shadow, small, still, watching. I ran to the window and flung it open. Nothing. But on the sill lay a single thin black string, tied in a bow. Chapter 9. The Collector's Mark. I kept the black string, hid it beneath my mattress. I don't know why. Maybe to prove I hadn't imagined it. Maybe because I already knew what it meant. They'd found me again. That night I didn't sleep. I listened, every creak in the floorboards, every gust of wind scraping a branch across the siding. The house moaned like something was shifting inside it, waking up. In the morning I told Marion I was feeling sick, stayed in bed, pretended, but really I was watching the puppet. Emma. She'd moved. Her head was tilted now, ever so slightly, eyes angled toward the hallway, toward my room. I set up my phone on the shelf across from her that night, hit record, covered the red light with tape. Then I waited. At 2:13 a.m. the screen flickered. The video shook slightly, like something in the room had shifted the air itself. Emma's head turned. Slowly. Her arms jerked forward, limbs shivering, strings humming with tension. She stepped off the shelf, walked, toward me. I shut off the video. My hands were trembling. I didn't scream. I didn't run. Instead, I took the string from under my bed and wrapped it around my finger like a tether. They weren't just puppets. They were collectors. And I was next. I packed a bag the next morning, stole a steak knife from the kitchen, a flashlight, a notebook. Then I walked. Left the house and didn't stop. I knew where I had to go, back to the origin, the place where it all began. The house was gone, yes, burned down decades ago, but I didn't need the house. I needed the cellar, the real workshop. I reached the woods by sundown, hiked the overgrown trail with a frantic energy, checking behind me every few minutes. The orchard was gone, just scorched earth and blackened stumps. But the ground remembered. I found the hollow spot where the hidden door used to be. I dug, with bare hands until dirt turned to ash and ash to splintered boards. Then I felt it, stone, cold and old, a rusted ring. I pulled. The trapdoor groaned open. The stairs still led down. I descended. Chapter 10, The Final String. The air was damp, heavy with the scent of glue and rot. The flashlight flickered, catching on cobwebs strung like threads from wall to wall. They were waiting, dozens of them, puppets. Shelves and racks filled with little wooden people, blank faces, carved grins, some missing limbs, others with too many, each with a name and a year. Emma, 1956, Jonah, 1971, Mira, 1983, Liam, 2025. I stopped, there it was. My name, the puppet version of me sat inside a glass case, hands folded on its lap, eyes looking down like it was ashamed. I approached slowly. The puppet looked up. "Help me," it whispered. I staggered back. The voice, it was mine. Then something creaked behind me. Grandpa stepped out of the shadows, holding the marionette crossbar. Strings dangled from his fingers like veins. His face was less human now, shiny at the edges, peeling like lacquer. "Welcome home, Liam," Grandma followed. Her joints cracked as she moved. Her smile was carved into her face now, literal and unmoving. "You can take your place now," she said gently. "It won't hurt. Not for long." I backed toward the stairs, but the path was blocked. Elliot was there, but he wasn't the boy I remembered. His eyes were glass now, strings stitched into his mouth. "I told you to run," he whispered, "but you came back." "I had to stop it," I said. Grandpa moved to the glass case, lifted the lid. "You already belong to us. We made you." "No," I said, "I'm not like you. You were never real to begin with." I felt dizzy. "What?" Grandma stepped closer. "Your parents never dropped you off. There was no summer visit. You've been here since you were carved." My chest tightened. "No, my memories, my room, school. Implanted," she said, "stories on strings, just enough to keep the illusion alive until you were ready." The puppet in the case smiled. "You're the replacement," Grandpa said, "for the one that burned, for the one that tried to escape." They surrounded me now, hands outstretched, wires dangling. I reached into my bag and pulled the knife, and I ran, not away, toward the shelves. I slashed at the puppets, cut strings, knocked them to the ground. Each one shattered with a scream, high and real. The chamber groaned. The walls pulsed like breathing lungs. Grandma shrieked, "You're breaking the circle." Good. I slashed again at the puppet version of myself. It cracked open like a split log. Light poured out, not fire, not flame, but memory, real memory. I saw my real parents, my real house, a birthday party, a dog, things I hadn't made up, things they'd taken. I was real. The last string snapped, the puppets fell silent. Grandpa collapsed into a heap of splinters. Grandma turned to dust, her smile the last thing to go. I climbed the stairs as the cellar shook apart. I ran until the sun rose, until I was sure I was free. That was a year ago. I live in a new town now. New home. Safe. But sometimes I hear the sound of strings at night, and sometimes I find tiny handprints on the inside of my window. Not mine. Not anymore. Because I may have escaped the puppets, but I don't think they ever really let go.